Hey class, welcome to another day in complete isolation and quarantine. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys enjoyed the end of Act 4, the end of the Crucible. I know a lot happened, but I'm gonna try and keep it as brief as possible. I also know that last time I said the video would be under 10 minutes, but of course it's me, so I got really into it and it was way longer. So this time I'm just not gonna promise how long it's gonna be, but I'm gonna try and keep it shorter. There's a lot of dialogue, being a play, of course, there's a lot of dialogue, but there's a lot of dialogue that I want to go over with you guys that's gonna be important. A lot of everything just comes to an end for the most part, except for a couple of characters. We don't know what really happens to them after the play. But anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are surviving and this crazy epidemic, because God knows most people at the end of Act 4 didn't survive that crazy epidemic. So let's go ahead and get started. So before we do too, also somebody wants to say hello. There's Audrey. Say hi. She loved all your guys' comments. I read them to her. She feels like a little queen, so thank you. Oh, okay. This is not about you, but so she'll be popping in and out again. But of course, I just knew you guys wanted to see that, and that's the real reason you're watching these videos. So go lay down. Okay, so Act 4. Where do we leave off in Act 3? What happened? That was a whole thing about Abigail staring up at the ceiling for the bird. Mary Warren cries out, and she ends up naming John Proctor. And that's where John Proctor realizes that there's no more reason, there's no more logic in Salem, that it's basically just pure chaos, insanity, and that phrase again, mass hysteria. So he says his famous line, God is dead. Meaning he's basically given up on anything good or anything worth having in Salem. So he gets arrested, everybody's arrested, Hale leaves the court, and it ends in just this really somber, sad tone. And we go into Act 4 just as somber and sad, because we actually open up into a new scene. Instead of being in a house outside or even in a courtroom, this takes place in a jail cell. This takes place in the jail cell in Salem, and it's fall now. So later on in the book, they say how many months it's been, but you should know that it's fall. And earlier, it was a lot hotter. So we're assuming that it was maybe summertime. So it's been about 3 months since Act 3. That means everybody that's been arrested, Elizabeth, John, Giles, Martha, Francis, everybody's been arrested, has been in jail for at least 3 months. And what's really important about the opening of Act 4 is that Arthur Miller, the author of the play, sets the scene that it's not a jail cell that you'd really want to be in. It's not even, I mean, nobody would want to be in a modern jail cell, but even them would be luxury compared to what these people are in 1692 in Salem, Massachusetts. So their cells are dark. It's like one room. It smells. It's disgusting. There's probably rats everywhere. They probably had to use buckets for their feces and things like that. It's not a good time. And then of course, since they are witches and they've been accused of witchcraft, they're not being treated well. Some of them have been beaten to confess. Some of them are chained up. Some of them are not really being fed. It's just not a good time for anybody. And that's why in the beginning we have Sarah Good. So if you remember, like, she was one of the first people accused. She was already a little bit not all there. And then Tituba. I told you Tituba would come back. Not the happiest of endings for her either. So Sarah Good and Tituba are in jail, and they are expected the next morning to be hanged with a lot of other people, including John Proctor. And we have Herrick, that marshal, who's there, and he feels sorry for them because they've gone crazy. And if you didn't get that from the first couple of pages, hopefully you caught on, because Sarah Good and Tituba keep talking about the devil, the master, the old person that they're going to see. They're going to fly away. Tituba's going to go back to Barbados, and she has this dream of that they're not dying, that they're going to be free with their master. Now, this doesn't mean that Tituba and Sarah Good were witches at all. It just means that under intense scrutiny, intense questioning, and horrible living standards, they've gone crazy to the fact that they've actually started to believe, like, yeah, maybe we are witches. Maybe the devil is going to come save us. And so Herrick feels bad. He gives them a little bit of drink from his flask, which is alcohol. He gives them alcohol to make them feel a little bit better, to try and get through the night. but he ends up getting in trouble for that, and he really shouldn't have done that. Now ask yourself, because this is kind of the theme of this act, is why does Herrick feel bad? Because Herrick was that character that kind of liked his job as being a marshal. He liked having authority. That was his motivation, was that now he has a little bit of power. He's going crazy with it. Why does he feel bad? Because he sees the reality of what he's done now. He's seen people die. He's seen these women go crazy and be treated poorly in their cells, and he's starting to feel guilty. A lot of the characters are going to start feeling guilty in Act 4. Even Judge Danforth, a little bit, even though he will never give up his reputation. So, after we have that, we have the judge comes in, Judge Danforth, we have Judge Hawthorne, remember related to Nathaniel Hawthorne of Scarlet Letter, and we have a character missing, Reverend Hale. Where is Reverend Hale? Where did he go? Where has he been for the past 3 months after he denounced the court system? And then also, where is Paris? Paris has been a big part of this. I mean, remember, he's Abigail's uncle, and he's Betty's father, and he was the reverend of the town that not all the people liked, and he had his own motives, a reputation. So where has he been? And that's what everybody's talking about, because where Paris has been is basically hiding for the most part. And why is he hiding? Because the town is mad at him. Hello. Because the town is mad at him. And let's ask yourself, why are they mad at him? Because he's one of the first reasons that these accusations got out. And he's been a big supporter of this and someone who's really pushed that mass hysteria. So there's the scene where he is begging Judge Danforth to pardon everybody that's been arrested, especially John Proctor. Now, why pardon John Proctor? And pardoning means to let them go free, like to not have them be murdered or hanged. And why free John Proctor? Because the last 12 people that they hanged were people like Sarah Osborne, who was a drunk and living on the streets, and there was other people who were actual sinners and just not people who were popular in the town who died, so nobody really cared. But John Proctor's going to die in the morning, in a matter of hours in Act 4, and that's going to be huge for this town because John Proctor is a big name. He's a good person. He's upstanding in the community. So if they actually hang someone like him, and if they hang someone like Rebecca Nurse, who's also really respected in the community, people might start rioting. People might start questioning the validity of the court and if Judge Danforth is really doing what's right for the people. So again, Paris is looking out for himself. Paris doesn't try to save Proctor because he likes Proctor, because he's had a change of heart. No, Paris tries to save John for himself because he knows it's going to be bad. Because there's even a part in this play where he is uncontrollably shaking and crying because he's nervous, and he tells the judge that when he walked out of his house the other day, a knife clattered in front of him. That means somebody threw a knife at him. Somebody tried to kill him or at least try to scare him and threaten him. And so now the town is kind of starting to wake up from this mass hysteria. And usually out of mass hysteria we might get angry mobs, and angry mobs are just as crazy as people in mass hysteria. And angry mobs like to retaliate and seek out vengeance. And who are they going to do it against? Definitely Reverend Paris. But why wouldn't they seek out vengeance against Abigail? Because Abigail Williams is really the girl, the person who's been behind a lot of this. So why not go after Abigail? That's right, because she's non-existent in Act 4 because she's disappeared. Reverend Paris comes to tell Judge Danforth that Abigail did such a teenage thing where she says, "Hey, uncle, I'm going to go sleep over at Mercy Lewis's house." And Mercy Lewis told her parents, "I'm going to sleep over at Abigail's house." So that's why they can sneak out. Then Abigail steals all of Reverend Paris's, her uncle's money. And then Betty overhears them talking about boats. So we can only assume that they've just sailed away. So nowhere in Act 4 does Abigail come up again. I mean, her name doesn't come up again. She gets no retribution. She gets no punishment. She gets no vengeance against her for this. She gets away with it. And gets away with it, I mean, physically she gets away with it. Who knows what her soul was feeling? Who knows what happened to her afterward? And there's a lot of theories about what happened to her because, remember, these are real people. just with a little bit extra fictional touches. So Abigail Williams was a real 16-year-old girl, really was one of the main criers of witchcraft in Salem in 1692. And she was in the courts, and then one day she just disappeared. One of the theories is that she got away but didn't get too far, and ended up dying a year later of starvation. Which, I mean, kind of deserve, not that anybody deserves that, but kind of deserves it. There's another theory that she ended up in another small town a few years later, working as a prostitute, as a harlot, which I don't know if that one's really real. I think it's just people would kind of hope because it's such sweet justice that way, but I doubt that's real. All we know is that she just disappears before any real punishment can come her way. And that's frustrating. And it should be frustrating for you. Like, we built her up, we talked about her forever, and then she just, nothing happens to her. So keep her in mind. We'll talk about her again at the end, just to kind of some discussion questions at the end. But that's it. That's it for Abigail and her friend Mercy Lewis. Okay, so going back. So eventually, Reverend Hale shows up. And he's actually been in town for like about a couple days or so. And Judge Danforth is not happy about this, especially since Reverend Hale left denouncing him in the court. Why is Reverend Hale back? He's back because he's been spending nights with some of the prisoners like John Proctor, Elizabeth, and Rebecca Nurse, begging them to confess. Like, literally begging them to confess. Not to confess because he thinks they're witches anymore, or that he even believes in any of that fake or hooey or anything like that. It's because he realizes the only way to save their lives and to save his guilt is by convincing them to admit witchcraft, and that means they won't be hanged as long as they say that they're saved now. So he's been exhausting his efforts in doing that, and even Reverend Paris has been helping him. And a lot of it is just to alleviate their own guilt. I mean, Reverend Hale knows he's probably going to go to hell because he's been part of this. Reverend Hale knows that he is just as bad as Judge Danforth and them because he did push this idea of witches, and he helped get a lot of people arrested. But he's one of the only people that actually feels that guilt so heavily that he wants to do something about it. It's still kind of selfish of him to only want to save people to free his own conscience, especially after 12 people have already been hanged at this point and died innocently. But at least he's trying to step up and do the right thing now. And he keeps trying to beg with Judge Danforth. And there's this quote where Judge Danforth is asking Reverend Hale over and over again, "Are you responsible for Andover? Did you go preach in Andover?" Now, Andover is another city that was a couple, like, not city, but like town, a couple towns away from Salem. And at the exact same time that the Salem witch trials were happening, the city of Andover had its own, like, witch trials. Except in the history books, about halfway through, all of a sudden everybody kind of realized in Andover that this is dumb. And the mass hysteria broke, and they were like, they're no longer under the spell of the mass hysteria. And so, like, nobody died in Andover. And there's all these theories about what actually happened. And so Arthur Miller's theory is that Reverend Hale, knowing the chaos and the insanity of Salem, went to Andover and tried to convince the people and tried to help things there. And he ended up helping because nobody died in Andover because nobody went as crazy as Salem did. But Judge Danforth is angry about this because he doesn't want what happened in Andover to happen in Salem. Why? Wouldn't he want people to be saved? Wouldn't he want people to not have to hang and die? The problem is, and this is where he gets to it, is that he can't do a postponement. He can't give Reverend Hale more time to convince people to confess. He can't pardon anybody anymore because it's too late, according to him, because he's already hanged 12 people. So his logic and his reasoning and his argument is that I can't save anybody, I can't pardon anybody, because if I pardon people now, then people will start to question if those 12 people died for nothing. Which they did. They died for nothing. So he thinks he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's like, well, I don't want any more people to die, But if these people don't die, then these 12 other people who already died in vain, and then it makes me look kind of bad. And his actual quote is that postponement now speaks of floundering on my part, of floundering, like a fish jumps out of water, that's floundering. Reprieve on parting must cast doubt upon the guilt of them that died till now. So he just doesn't want people to question his original statements. So again, he's motivated by his reputation. He's motivated by what people will think of him. He was motivated by the fact that he is the law and he knows best, and there's no way he could have made a mistake. Even though he's starting to see that he definitely made a mistake, he will never admit to it. And so he's not going to save future people because 12 people already died, and it's too late to do things now. Which is a horrible reasoning and not logical at all, but that's Judge Danforth for you. But what he's really scared of is rebellion and riot, because Paris and Reverend Hale are trying to tell him, if you hang John Proctor, the John Proctor, tomorrow morning, there will be riots in Salem, because people will realize that even good people like John Proctor and good people like Rebecca Nurse can die. And they're scared for themselves. And Reverend Hale says excellency, referring to Judge Danforth, there are orphans wandering from house to house. Abandoned cattle bellow on the high roads. The stink of rotting crops hang everywhere, and no man knows when the harlot's cry will end his life. And you wonder yet if rebellion spoke? So Reverend Hale is saying, you've murdered people. I mean, there's children, there's orphans running around town trying to find where their parents are. And where are their parents? They were hanged. There's cows and cattle and crops that haven't been tended to because their owners have been hanged. There are people starving. There are people scared that if they look at any of those teenage girls the wrong way, that the courts are going to come for them next. You know, it's like a perfect melting pot of fear and suspicion and anger that if one more thing gets dropped into that melting pot, it's gonna explode. And that one more thing is gonna be Rebecca Nurse and John Proctor being hanged. And Reverend Hale knows it, Paris knows it, Judge Danforth knows it, but he's too afraid to admit it. So what he does is he goes, okay, I definitely don't want rebellion, I don't want riot, I can't pardon him, but what we can do is try and convince John to sign away his name, to basically say, yes, I am a witch. Yes, I did do bad things. I was friends with the devil. He needs John to say it. But John's been in jail for 3 months now and hasn't said a word. He's literally just been sitting there, stone-faced, for 3 months. So why would he confess now? So their idea is to get Elizabeth Proctor, to get his wife to see him and to talk to him and to hopefully convince him to confess, to save his own life. And now, if other people have died already, why isn't Elizabeth dead? I mean, she had some pretty hard evidence against her, and Abigail was really trying to murder her, so why isn't Elizabeth dead? Elizabeth's pregnant, don't forget. She is pregnant, and it's been 3 months, and now she's to the point where she's showing. And the courts are evil, but they're not so evil that they're going to hang a pregnant woman. So that's why she's still alive. But keep in mind, it's been 3 months. So all those harsh conditions I was telling you about a prison in Salem, imagine being pregnant in those harsh conditions. There's no way she got the vitamins and the prenatal care and extra food and everything that she needed. I doubt she barely got enough water and bread to survive those 3 months. And they bring her in the room, and she's described as being in clothes that are dirty, linked by heavy chains, her face pale. They haven't seen the sun in 3 months, and gaunt. Gaunt meaning, I'm not gaunt because I have big cheeks, but like kind of sunken in cheeks when you haven't eaten anything for a very long time. So she's not looking so good, but still she survives. And they bring her up and they say, listen, we know you haven't seen your husband for 3 months. Yeah, also she hasn't seen her kids or her husband for 3 months while she's been in jail. But we need you to talk to John. We need you to convince Proctor to confess to free him. And it's a troubling thing for Elizabeth to do, but she kind of remains quiet the whole time that they say this. So Reverend Hale steps in, and Reverend Hale says, listen, life, woman, life is God's most precious gift. For it may well be that God damns a liar less than he that throws his life away for pride. So this is this theme that the play's going to end with, but it gets introduced here to you, which is the idea of pride and what is more important, to live your life and survive and give away your name, or to die nobly, to die with your pride intact. And I can't answer that question for anybody. That's a question you have to answer for yourself. But what Reverend Hale is saying is John is going to die because he refuses to lie. He refuses to give up his name and say that he's a witch. He's going to die for his pride. And Reverend Hale says God doesn't want that. God created life. Life is precious. God would rather you live than to die, not have life anymore, but your name is intact. So it's the idea, this is a super extreme example, but let's say somebody comes up and for some reason puts a gun to your head and says, I will not shoot you if you say that Catholicism is a lie, that God is a lie, that everything you believe in is a lie. And just replace that with whatever you passionately believe in. And you have to ask yourself, what would God want me to do, right? WWJD, what would Jesus do? And some people might answer, God would never want you to denounce his name. God would never want you to lie. So God would want you to die, like many saints did, with your pride intact, with not lying. Other people would say, no, God would totally forgive you and totally understand if you had a lie because there's a gun to your head and you had to save your own life. Because what you say out loud can be different than what's in your heart. So this is the same idea with John Proctor, is Reverend Hale saying, listen, it's not a good thing for John to lie, but we need him to lie in order to stay alive, and God will forgive him for that. But Elizabeth doesn't really know what to do. She is torn either way. She's a very godly woman. She is all about telling the truth until Act 3, of course, which ruins everything. So it's hard for her. So then everybody tries to come at her and say, Hanforth says, you got to talk to her. Hawthorne says, sorry, you got to talk to her. And he says, and this is what's really hard about Judge Danforth, is the whole time he's badgering her and berating her, she's stone cold. Face is not showing any emotion. She's not crying. She's not on the floor weeping. She's not begging or pleading. She's just stone cold. And this angers Judge Danforth because he's like, I even like an ape would be crying right now. Even an animal would be crying right now. Maybe you are a witch if you are so cold that you're not even crying at the fact that your husband's going to be hanged within the next 30 minutes unless you convince him. And she just, nothing, no reaction out of her. And you need to ask yourself, why is she acting this way? It is not because she doesn't love her husband. It is not because that she doesn't have emotion. It's because it's been 3 months and she's had to survive. And the only way to survive was kind of shutting down emotions and letting her heart being stone cold. Because that second that one tear comes down, she feels like she's going to just explode and start weeping. So if you've ever been really sad about something and kept it inside, and it just keeps building and building, and it gets to the point where somebody asks, hey, are you okay? And them just asking, hey, are you okay? You just boom, bust out with just complete tears, and you just start sobbing. I mean, like gross sobbing, like snot running down your face sobbing. And that's what she feels is going to happen. So she can't let any emotion out because she doesn't want them to see her be emotional. She's trying to be a strong woman, which, I give her a lot of credit for. I don't know if I could survive 3 months in a cold Salem cell in 1692, but that's the best way she's done it. So don't get confused. She does love John very much. So she agrees, though. Okay, I'll talk to John. I can't promise you anything, but I do want to see my husband. So they bring John in, and this is how John is described. Remember, he's been in prison for 3 months. Herrick enters with John Proctor. His wrists are chained. He is another man, bearded, filthy, his eyes misty as though webs had overgrown them. He halts inside the doorway, his eyes caught by the sight of Elizabeth. The emotion flowing between them prevents anyone from speaking from an instant. So John comes in and he's described as being a different man. And I think that's totally excusable because it's been a horrible 3 months for him, and he has a beard and he's gross and he probably smells and his clothes are tattered and he's covered in chains, and he's a different man on the outside, because he's a different man on the inside. He no longer has faith or hope or love. He's just been angry and sad and just feeling so lost for 3 months that how he feels on the inside is reflected on the outside. Until he walks in and he sees Elizabeth. And again, it's described as the emotion flowing between them prevents anyone from speaking. It's such a beautiful moment between these two people who actually were in love despite his horrible choice, that were in love and haven't seen each other in 3 months. They see each other from across the room and they don't even need to speak. There's just emotion in their eyes. You can feel it. And it's so tangible, the emotion, that it hushes everybody else in the room because it's such a powerful, real, raw moment. And that's when we know that there is love between them. Even after all this time, there is love between them. So Hale, sensing this emotion, basically convinces everybody to leave the room. That there's no way Proctor's going to confess with Danforth and Hawthorne in the room. So Hale says, give them time. Give them some time together. So they all start leaving. But the best part is on their way out, Reverend Paris, he's such just a conniving little spineless coward. And as he leaves, Paris, from a safe distance, meaning far away from Proctor, offers, if you desire a cup of cider, Mr. Proctor, I'm sure I can get. And Proctor beams and turns an icy stare at him. So Proctor, who, so Paris, who hates Proctor, Paris, who's been accusing Proctor of being a witch and his wife being a witch this whole time, Paris, who's been trying to get rid of Proctor for years, realizes what he's done, and the way of trying to ask for forgiveness is to, from a safe distance, because Proctor's a lot stronger than him, from a safe distance say, can I get you a cup of something? Do you need anything? Are you okay? And John just looks at him with an icy stare like, what a jerk. What an absolute jerk. So that's like if you had a friend in your friend group who turned you in. I hate using this example, sorry if any admin has seen this, but it turns you into Miss Castillo, and you know she turned you in. Everybody knows she turned you in, and she's even said on Twitter that she turned you in because she's so proud behind her phone to say that. But then sees you at school and it's like, hey, can I get you a bag of hot Cheetos? What is that? You know, that's a two-faced person. And so it's just such a great little sidebar moment in this of just really understanding what a horrible person Paris is, and John's icy stare. I can't wait till you guys see the movie so you can see John's face. So everybody leaves, it's them together, and then we get a couple of pages of build up before the ending. And the reason the author does this because he wants to give you this hope that they're going to be together at the end. And I'm just going to spoiler alert, they're not going to be together at the end. Maybe in heaven, but not here on earth. So we have this emotion. Alone, Proctor walks to her, halts. It is as though they stood in a spinning world. It is beyond sorrow, above it. He reaches out his hand as though toward an embodiment not quite real. Amazement comes from his throat. A strange, soft sound, half laughter. He pats her hand. She covers his hand with hers, and then weak he sits. So before they even speak, Proctor goes up to her and just is amazed that she's there, is amazed by her beauty. He's reminded of everything he loved about her. And instead of rejecting him like she's done these past, 8+ months because of the affair, she takes his hand and just puts it up against her face. And that's such a moment between a couple of two people that love each other, that don't even need to say words to really communicate how they feel. So it's just saying I love you without words, which just makes me more sad at the ending of this. So they talk, and it kind of starts as awkward small talk in the beginning. They talk about what's happening with everybody. John hasn't gotten any news in 3 months since he's been there. Nobody's been there to tell him anything. So he didn't even know that Giles Corey, our favorite old curmudgeon, had died. And I promised you guys in the very beginning that Giles would not die the way everybody else died. Now, keep in mind, this is true. This is not part of the fiction, part of the story. What happened to Giles Corey was real. And what happened was Giles Corey, remember he got arrested for contempt of court, meaning he shut up and wouldn't say anything. He was so smart in doing that because it says He would not answer aye or nay. So he would not answer yes or no to his indictment. For if he denied the charge, they'd hang him surely. So if he opened his mouth and said, "No, I'm not guilty," they would hang him like everybody else that was denying. But surely, had he opened his mouth, right, he would be arrested and his property would be taken away. So either way, his property is going to get taken away. So the smartest thing he could do was remain silent. And that's what he did. He stood mute and died Christian under the law, meaning that his sons were entitled to his farm. So, I mean, it's horrible that he dies, but he still goes dying, kind of giving them one last little, "Ha, got you." And that now that I remain mute, you can't really, I'm still a Christian being buried, which means you can't take my property, so now my sons get my property. That's sad that he had to die for that, but at least he got to kind of have that moment. And he gets another famous moment in history when they actually kill him. And how they kill him is, remember, they killed everybody by hanging. But they couldn't do that to him because he wasn't formally accused of witchcraft. So they wanted to torture him into saying something. So what they did was they laid him flat. And as they laid him flat, they took a huge, heavy stone, about the size of his torso, placed it on him. Then they took another stone, the same size, just placing on him. So what they're doing is they're just placing weight on him so that he would slowly be crushed to death. I mean, I don't want to be hanged, but if I had a choice of how I'm going to go, I think I'd rather be instant, like neck break, than be crushed to death. And I think any one of us in that situation would probably be like, "You know what? I am a witch. I'm done. Please don't kill me. I don't want to be crushed to death anymore because this is horrible and painful, and you're choking me and you're cutting off my air supply and you're crushing my organs at the same time." But Giles Corey, in his true fashion, every time they kept asking him, like, "Are you a witch? Are you a witch?" His last dying words, the only thing he says when they ask him is, he says, "More weight." What a cool way to go. I'm sorry, what a cool last few words to say, is that in the face of all this insanity and these horrible people that are killing him for being innocent, all he says to them is, "More weight. Give me more weight because I'm going out my way." And he does. And Elizabeth and John actually have a moment of laughing to themselves like, "Oh, that's such a Giles thing to say." So after the small talk, after they get kind of the laughter out of the way, we go back to the emotion between them. And Proctor says, "I cannot mount the gibbet," which is where they hang people, like, like the bottom drop. So basically that platform. He goes, "I can't mount the platform like a saint. It is a fraud. I am not that man. My honesty is broke, Elizabeth. I am not a good man. Nothing spoiled by giving them this lie that were not rotten long before." So now he starts questioning, maybe I should just confess and lie and say that I am a witch. Why not? I'm not a good man. I've already hurt you. I'm already a liar. I'm not a saint like Rebecca Nurse is being by not confessing. I should just confess, because what does it matter? I'm already a horrible person. But Elizabeth says, "But you haven't confessed till now, so maybe that speaks goodness in you." And so Elizabeth's trying to be a comforting, supportive wife. And Proctor says, "Spite only keeps me silent. It is hard to give a lie to dogs." So he says, "No, I haven't been silent because I'm a good man. I've been silent because I hate those people so much. I hate Judge Danforth and Paris and them so much that I don't want to lie. I don't want to give them the satisfaction of being right." And so it's spite, he says. But Elizabeth keeps trying to tell him, is like, "I think you're a good man." And so he says, "Elizabeth, whatever I do, first I need your forgiveness." And she's like, I've already forgiven you a long time ago. It's you. You sit in judgment in your own heart. You're more of a judge to yourself than God. Only you can judge yourself. You need to forgive yourself." And then she takes it a step further. And Elizabeth says, "These 3 months that I've been in jail, I've been thinking about everything, and only be sure of this, for I know now, whatever you will do, it is a good man that does it. I have read my heart this 3 month, John. I have sins of my own to count. It needs a cold wife to prompt lechery. So lechery means cheating on your wife or cheating on your spouse. So she says, it wasn't even your fault this whole time, John. I realized in my 3 months of solitude that it was my fault. I must have been such a bad wife. I must have been so cold to you that I'm the reason you're cheated. Girls, please promise me, if your partner ever cheats on you, and I hope that never happens to you, but if it ever happens, please don't ever blame yourself the way Elizabeth is blaming herself. I mean, always take responsibility for your actions. Try and be a good partner, don't be a cold person, but it's never your fault. You are never responsible for somebody else's actions. John cheated. It's not Elizabeth's fault. Even if Elizabeth was cold, that doesn't excuse his behavior, but she's such a saintly, godly woman that she's blaming herself for the affair. And John is like, enough, don't say that. It was my fault. And Elizabeth goes on. She's like, John, I counted myself so plain. Like so ugly. I counted myself so ugly, so poorly made that no honest love could come to me. Suspicion kissed you when I did. I never knew how I should say my love. It was a cold house I kept. Wow, this woman has no self-confidence, no belief. Nobody's ever told her she's beautiful. She literally says, I thought I was so ugly that I doubted why you would even be with me in the first place. Suspicion kissed you when I did. I didn't kiss you fully loving you because I didn't understand why you loved me. Ew, Elizabeth. Ew, why? You're so much better than that. I wish I could go back in time and tell her that. But John tries his best to tell her, no, I did it. I'm the bad man. But before he can really finish this conversation, everybody comes back in the room because time is up. The sun is just about to rise, which means John is going to be hanged. So John has to make a decision right now. Yes or no, are you going to confess? And he says, I will have my life. Notice he doesn't say I will confess. He says I will have my life. Meaning he's telling them, I'm going to choose my life. I don't want to look at it as a confession. I just want to choose my life. And so they say, okay, totally cool. We love this. Thank you so much. You're literally saving all of our butts. You're stopping a huge riot by confessing and saving yourself. So we just need you to do one more step. We need you to say it out loud to everybody, and then we need you to write it down. And John's not too happy about this. He says, I've said it. That should be enough. Why do I have to write it down? And they're like, well, we have to post it on the church door for everybody to see. There's no point in you confessing unless the whole town knows. And he's like, I said it and that's enough. And as he's saying that, Rebecca Nurse gets brought in because remember, Rebecca Nurse is going to die at sunrise as well. And Rebecca Nurse is like, oh my gosh, John, I haven't seen you forever. And John doesn't want to look at her because he's embarrassed that he's lying, that he's confessing, that he's doing what she's not doing. And then Rebecca realizes that John is confessing, and she's like, John, why are you doing this? Like, I'm about to die for my pride. You should come with me and die too. And so he feels guilty, and now he feels shamed that he is trying to save his own life by lying. So he's very torn, and that's the whole last 2 pages of this play is him being torn. And what really kind of just seals the deal then is Danforth says, okay, now when you sign this confession, you need to tell me, did you see Rebecca Nurse with the devil? Did you see Martha Corey with the devil? Did you see Giles? Did you see all these other people with the devil? And John says, no, I did not. I did not see anybody else. And Judge Danforth is like, well, why can't you already confessed, why can't you say this about the other people? And John's like, I've already confessed to something that I don't even believe is true. I'm not going to take everybody else down with me. There's no point in me doing that. And that angers Judge Danforth because, again, Judge Danforth doesn't want to save his life. To save his life, Judge Danforth wants him to confess so that way it inspires everybody else to confess so that way he doesn't have to deal with this mess anymore. And so this really makes Proctor angry that he's just being used like a pawn. And he says, you know what? I'm not going to do this. And then they flip back and forth, and he finally says, okay, I do it. And he begrudgingly signs his name to the paper. And then he's just about to give it to Judge Danforth, and Judge Danforth is like creepily smiling, like, yes, like I'm taking the confession of John Proctor. And then John all of a sudden snatches it back and will not give them the paper. And he says, I've signed it, this is enough. And they said, it's not enough, John. We need the paper from you. And he goes, no, you've seen me. You've witnessed me. You're the highest man in court. I don't care what you tell them. I don't care. You can tell them I got down on my knees. You can tell them that I wept like a woman. You can say whatever about me, that I was a coward. But leave me this piece of paper. Please do not post this. Give me my name. And that's what he keeps screaming towards the end. He says with the cry of his whole soul, because it is my name, because I cannot have another in my life, because I lie and sign myself to lies, because I am not worth the dust on the feet of them that hang. How may I live without my name? I have given you my soul, but leave me my name. So the real reason why John hangs at the end, and the real reason why John goes down with the ship, is because he cares about his reputation and his pride more than anything else. Now, he cares about his reputation in a different way that Judge Danforth does. This is a much more noble way, but it comes down to that idea too, is what's more important? Your name, your reputation, what people think about you? But he basically just says, if you post this and I give you my name, I give you who I am, I give you who John Proctor is, even if I live, it'll be an unhappy life, because I have 3 sons. How am I supposed to raise these sons to walk like men if I couldn't even walk like a man? If I did the cowardly thing by confessing and lying to something that I didn't really do? How can I look my wife in the eye? How can the town look at me as someone respectable? So he sees it as there's no other choice for me. This is over. And he takes the paper and he just completely does that dramatic thing from a movie, and he rips the paper. And that seals his fate. He knows that, and Elizabeth bursts out into sobs. Now Elizabeth's emotion is just flowing out of her, because by him ripping it, she knows it's over for her husband, and the love of her life, and the future of a happy family as she knows it is over with now. And he tells her, don't cry. Give them no tears. Tears pleasure them. Show honor now. Show a stony heart and sink them with it. So he says, don't cry. This is what they want. Be strong. Don't let them have your pride. Keep your pride. He lifts her and kisses her now with great passion. And this is not just a kiss between a husband and a wife. This is a kiss between 2 soulmates saying goodbye. I don't want to put things in your guys' head, but imagine you had to say goodbye to someone you loved, and you know this is the absolute last time you'd see them. Maybe you've experienced this before with a grandparent or anything, but it's not just a kiss. It's not just a hug. It's an emotional experience of, this is the last physical presence I have of this person. And it's this entire weight of the world on them too, is that they forgive each other in this kiss, that they tell everything they've ever wanted to say to each other, not verbally, but through this kiss. And it's just one of the most dramatic kisses in history. So they say goodbye. And so they arrest Proctor, and they take him, and they take Rebecca Nurse to the gallows, which is where they're going to hang him. And they take them up there, and as he's doing that, as he's about to be hanged, Paris starts yelling, "Go to him, Goody Proctor, go to him, Elizabeth, there is yet time, go to him." And Paris runs out the door yelling after Proctor. Again, not to save Proctor's life because Paris is a good person, but because he knows the second it's over, the second John hangs, the town is coming for him. And so Paris tries to save his own life that way, but it's over for him. And then Hale says one last thing. Reverend Hale says, "Woman, plead with him." He starts to rush to the door and then goes back to her. "Woman, it is pride. It is vanity. Be his helper. What profits him to bleed? Shall